Welcome to the Wisconsin in Focus podcast, powered by the Center Square. I'm Bruce Walker, Midwest Regional Editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Wisconsin in Focus is a production of America's Talking Network. You can find all of the Center Square's great podcasts at americastalking.com. We're recording today on Thursday, February 16th, expecting major snowstorms in the Great Lakes region, including Wisconsin, where sits our erstwhile Wisconsin correspondent, Benjamin Yount. How you doing today, Ben?
Erstwhile. I'm going to have to go and look that one up in the dictionary to see exactly if I should be flattered or the backhanded flattery. But
no, be flattered, my friend. Be flattered. It's one of those catch-all adjectives. I
think we need to update the subscription language for the young people. Hey, don't forget to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button, yo. Donate to us. We need to pep it up. You know, podcasts are a young person's medium, so we need to speak to them where they are. No cap. Give us some cash, yo.
I'm a bit long in the tooth for that, but
my teenage children keep me young and up to date with all of the slangerisms.
Yeah, well, it's when I deal with our Michigan correspondent and I have to explain to him every single last reference that I make that is related to pop culture because he just doesn't get it. I think he was brought up in a shoebox in the back of a closet somewhere.
By the way, but we have to point out, yes, R.I.P. Raquel Welch.
I know. That made me sad.
It is one of the interesting things, and I talked about this on the radio, that there was, whenever a celebrity dies, the network does sort of an obituary. And with Raquel Welch, they tried to play some sort of sound from a movie that she was in. And I had to say that it misses the point because she was not a great actress. She was an absolute smoke show. She was gorgeous, one of the most beautiful women of the 60s and 70s, but that doesn't really, you can't communicate
she was
that.
Objectively attractive.
Yeah, on the radio. You can't just be like, hey, Raquel Welch is dead. You know her. If not, your older brother or your dad certainly knows who Raquel Welch is. Can't do that on an audio medium. Here on podcasts, we can't play her song or the famous line that she would have from a movie. It's just sort of, but speaking of
she didn't have a
reference,
catchphrase. She did not have a catchphrase. No, that you're very correct in that. Although I remember rushing home from school every time there would be a Raquel Welch week on the afternoon cinema on television, and it would always be The Fantastic Voyage with Stephen Boyd and Donald Pleasance. Isaac Asimov wrote the novelization of the screenplay, and was where she shrunk and she has to go in and do what she does with lasers to remove a life-threatening clot from the brain of a politician that was in a car accident. And so I think there's a metaphor there that perhaps maybe Raquel Welch died just when we needed her the most.
Yes, R.I.P. to Raquel Welch.
Sigh. Okay, well let's talk a little bit about politicians and their wacky ideas and what they're up to these days, because we have a lot of blowback, and we saw this coming. Yeah. You alerted me to this weeks ago that whatever Governor Tony Evers was ready to announce at his Wednesday evening budget reveal, there would be a lot of gnashing of teeth and rending of garments.
Look, everybody in the Wisconsin Capitol knew what this governor was going to propose. We wrote about it. He did the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs for, like you said, weeks. He was going to ask for more. And this is the theme. If there is a theme to 2023 for Tony Evers, it is more taxes, more spending, more government programs, more power for his office, more from Washington, D.C., more. So everybody expected this governor to come out and ask for more. We knew that he was going to ask for a couple of hundred new state jobs. We knew that he wanted that $2.5 billion for public schools. We knew that he wanted to grow government programs. I mean, he's made no secret of his desire to expand Medicaid. He said that when he was first hired or when he was first elected, and then he said it with his second state budget, and now he said it with his third state budget. But as prepared as we thought we were unprepared by just how much more the governor asked for. All told, his budget plan, and it's tough to call it a budget plan because there are no actual specifics. There's nothing that says, oh, the Department of Revenue will get this, and the Department of Workforce Development will get that, and the Department of Administration will get such. It's more a wish list of political promises. But even with that, we were all unprepared across the state of Wisconsin for the governor to come out and ask for $104 billion over the next 2 years. It's about $54 billion, little less, 53-ish, all totaled with some other, federal and transportation nonsense. But he's asking for 50-something billion a year. Wisconsin's current budget is $44 billion. Now, we can have the conversation about why Illinois, which has nearly 13 million people, and Wisconsin, who has just over 6 million people, continue to spend about the same amount of money. But this was a jaw-droppingly large figure. The governor wants to spend $104 billion over the next 2 years, and that would not only spend every single dime of Wisconsin's record $7.1 billion budget surplus, it would force to raise taxes. It would be the largest amount of spending ever in the state of Wisconsin's history. It would be almost 25% more than what we are currently spending. And it is all, for lack of a more specific turn of phrase, dead on arrival, because there's no possible way that anyone outside of even the most dedicated or outside of perhaps the most dedicated Democrats, there's no way that they're going to be able to support this anywhere in the Assembly or the Senate.
Okay, so it's over $100 billion per year for 2 years. That is correct?
For both years. It's 50-something million each year for 2 years. We in Wisconsin do, the official term is biennium. But since I've never heard somebody say that, it is a 2-year spending plan. That's how I write it, because I am a man of the people. But yeah, no, $104 billion for the 2-year state budget. So 50-something billion a year. And it's just, again, we're spending 44. Now, that's a lot, but 50.
It is a lot. But by comparison, here in Michigan, we're looking at the governor's proposed budget, which we will, just like you would, kind of suss it out as dead on arrival. But yeah, she's looking to spend about $70 billion. And that's just off the back of the envelope right now. But I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood. So you're still, you got some catching up to do there, Tony Evers.
Don't give them bad ideas. Bruce, I say this all the time.
Balls in your court.
They've got plenty of bad ideas of their own. They don't need more bad ideas suggested from the outside, because these people will pick them up and go with them.
Okay. Well, I mean, they can, as long as they give me a blurb on the back of their jacket, I guess that's fine.
I don't know that you would want the credit for that. But anyways, I cut you off. You were about to say, so what's in this budget?
So what is in the budget, Ben? Tell us.
The big pieces are retreads. Again, this was all expected. To the degree is shocking, but the broad strokes were not surprising. The governor wants to expand Medicaid. Wisconsin was one of a handful of states that, back during the heady days of Obamacare, refused to expand Medicaid in the state. And for everybody following at home, Medicare is for older folks. Medicaid's the state-based program for single moms, sick grandmas, and people with profound disabilities. And Republicans and actually, most people who study the issue in Wisconsin say there is not a large bubble of people who just fall into that gap. The gap used to be people who couldn't afford private insurance but made too much money for Medicaid. Well, Wisconsin has Badger Care, and there is no gap. There are no people who are simply priced out of insurance that you have through the federal marketplace. You can go and you can buy a lower cost insurance plan. Wisconsin does have Medicaid. And again, the people who are supposed to be on that program are enrolled. But the governor wants to expand that to 138% of the federal poverty line. That would pick up several thousand more people. Wisconsin Republicans have always been very hesitant because there are other costs. And once you start taking the expanded Medicaid money from Washington, D.C., you are on the hook. And it's really hard to trim those costs. If you need an example, go look at Illinois, where Medicaid is now, besides their horrible pension system, Medicaid is the second largest piece of the state budget. In Wisconsin, the number one piece of the state budget is public schools. We'll get to the governor's $2.5 billion for public schools here in a second. But the other big program that the governor is proposing, the other expansion that, again, not surprising but shocking in detail, he wants to create 12 weeks of paid family leave here in Wisconsin. And he's proposing $300 million from the state's surplus. By the way, just the exact same amount of money that he wants to give to the Brewers to build their ballpark or fix their ballpark. But he wants to take...
Okay, bookmark that one.
Yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. Put a pin in that topic. He wants to take $300 million and stick it in a trust fund so that the state could help pay people to take time off when they need paid family leave. There would then be a tax on every single employer in the state that would keep that trust fund filled. And Republicans and the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Group, which is Wisconsin's largest business group, have all come out and said this thing will be crushing, particularly to small businesses that are struggling to keep up as is. Many of the other things in the governor's budget proposal are what we've heard before. He still wants to legalize marijuana. He continues to say that if we legalize, and not just medical marijuana, but a fully legal recreational marijuana program like you see in so many states, if we go all the way, the governor says there could be millions upon millions of dollars brought into the Wisconsin economy. Of course, he wants to tax it. The big price tag that grabbed the headlines, but again, we knew this was coming. We wrote the preview story earlier in the week, is the governor wants to spend $2.6 billion more on public schools in the state. And you have to say more because it gets kind of confusing to remember. We're not good at math, and state budgets are kind of boring for most people. The state of Wisconsin already spends $8 billion on schools. That's the amount of aid that comes just from the state in the current budget. If you take a look at what local taxpayers are paying as well, that number goes through the roof. There are schools, and we wrote this story, earlier this month, maybe later last month. There are schools that have not yet spent some of their coronavirus stimulus money. There's still one more round, millions upon millions of dollars that have yet to be spent. Schools just can't spend this money fast enough, yet the governor wants to spend even more. He wants to create a statewide free lunch program. And this is one of these interesting issues that you have almost two competing arguments. The governor's thought is he does not want to ostracize children who have to take the free lunch. Back when we were in school, there used to be a little punch card and maybe a separate line for free lunch. And they've done away with that now. Everybody's got PIN numbers and keypads and all of that. But the governor's people say, hey, look, it's unfair. It makes kids on free lunch feel bad if one kid can pay for lunch and the other kid can't. So let's just pay for lunch for everybody. There is a tiny baby infinitesimal argument from a conservative standpoint that the Department of Education is injecting wokeness into the free school lunch program. And that there are some schools that are saying, hey, we're going to have to integrate locker rooms, no more boys, no more girls, no more single gender bathrooms, because the Department of Education is the one who's saying, hey, in order to qualify, you've got to have these non-discrimination policies. I don't believe that's the governor's thinking on this. And I don't think that there are enough people who would say, hey, let's take on the role of free lunch at the state level to avoid that. But this is one of these issues where you get some conversation. The governor essentially is trying all he can to boost traditional public schools, because one of the other wrinkles in his education budget would be to freeze open enrollment. And right now, you see more and more kids each year choosing to leave their traditional public schools. And this has been, the target for teachers' unions here in Wisconsin for years. And Republicans are proposing universal school choice. All kids can go where they want, very much like the Arizona model, where the money follows the kid. And so as the governor is proposing more money for traditional public schools, more hires at traditional public schools, more of a focus on traditional public schools, he's also trying to limit the ways that parents and families and children can get out of those traditional public schools. And look, if you've got a captive audience, if you've got a captive customer base, it really does kind of help prop up that product. And so there are so many people who are so upset with the governor's plans for schools in so many different ways, but sort of almost to each their own.
Okay, well, let's work our way out of the weeds. And because it's snowing outside, let's think of warm weather in a sunny ballpark watching baseball. And will that or will that not take place in the city of Milwaukee?
Pitchers and catchers reported today.
I know.
Look. Hey, I'm going to be.
That makes me excited.
Going to be the biggest NASCAR fan for about 2 weeks, and then once you start to get spring training games, sorry guys, driving left around the track. I got some baseball to watch. The governor this week really touched something off when he made the announcement that he wants to save Brewer baseball in Milwaukee, and that he is going to spend nearly $300 million to help the team fix its park. This is something that we've written about in the past over at the Center Square. This is something that's been in the works for years. And, unfortunately, we have to go back to the weeds to talk a little bit about this. There was a tax created in southeast Wisconsin, 6 counties around Milwaukee, to help pay for what was then Miller Park. It was a 1% sales tax that raised probably about $600 million between 1996 and when it was allowed to expire back in 2021. When that happened, the Brewers were all on board with it. They're like, yep, let's not tax the people. Let's give them back the money. But even then they were saying, but we're going to have to figure out about something. I mean, the roof at American Family Field opens and closes. It's one of the cooler parts about the stadium. If it's a cold day or a rainy day, close the roof. It's a beautiful southeast Wisconsin June Sunday. Open that baby up. Well, it costs a lot of money to keep up with the costs of opening and closing the roof, not to mention just all of the other stuff, painting the seats and the boilers and the concrete, and the Brewers have a whole long list. They've been working for years behind the scenes to try and figure out, hey, how do we get this? Because there's about $400 million-ish of needs that they're going to have taken care of. The entity that manages the ballpark there, the sports facilities district, they've got $87 million set aside. So you can see there's a gap, just even basic public school math, about $300 million gap. The governor all of a sudden dropped this. That's the best way to put it. He bigfooted this. He came out and said, I'm going to do this. We're going to save Brewer baseball. And the lawmakers who've been having these conversations, again, for the better part of a couple of years, were not only caught off guard that the governor just broke this, but they were bothered by the way that he said it. In a story that we're going to file later today, the top Republican in the Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, said the governor, by approaching this ballpark money in the way that he did, made it just infinitely more difficult because the governor injected politics into it. And the governor's management style of "you will do this, I'm in charge" rubs so many people inside the Capitol the wrong way. Vos explained, and he said this, the radio station where I work at News Talk 1130 WISN told Jay Weber, the show host, that there's going to be a way to try and take care of what the Brewers need. But it's going to have to be done by the legislature. As he said in the quote, the governor has abdicated his leadership on this issue. And so the sort of the dueling narratives in the story are, don't worry, lawmakers are going to take care of the Brewers. So just don't bet on it. Don't think the Brewers are going to Nashville. But also that once again, you've got Republicans saying they have to work around this governor. Now, full disclosure, because we buy a 10-game package to go see the Brewers every year. I love going down and tailgating at American Family Field. I've got my Robin Yount jersey hanging in the closet right behind me. Wore my Brewer hat to work this morning. I absolutely love the Milwaukee Brewers. I love going to American Family Field. It is my second favorite place to see a ball game. If the Brewers were to somehow leave or change the park, it would devastate this community. But there's going to be a conversation that Vos and Republican supporters have to have with members of their own party who don't want to see, for lack of a better word, corporate welfare. The idea that taxpayers should foot the bill for something that $1 billion corporation should pay for itself, that's going to be part of this debate. But as I made a point in a different place today, 50, 17, and 1. That's what it takes. 50 votes in the Assembly, 17 votes in the Senate, and 1 signature by the governor. And if you had me laying money, I'm going to put the Brewers probably in 3rd place in the NL Central, and I would bet the mortgage that the Brewers are going to get some money to fix their ballpark, and they're not going to leave Milwaukee.
Fair enough. But in any event, I'm excited for a little bit of play ball. So you mentioned that it's your second favorite stadium. Let's close out. And what's the big reveal?
Busch
Stadium. Your favorite?
New Busch Stadium in St. Louis. They've got all-inclusive options that are phenomenal. You can stay at a hotel. Literally, you can see the ballpark from your hotel room. It's very easy to get in and get out. Kaufman would be number 3. I'm trying to think what else. The stadium in Cincinnati isn't bad. I really, 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 really want to get to Pittsburgh this year because I hear nothing but great things about PNC Park. Worst ballpark?
Okay, I will buy you a hot dog if you come with me to Comerica Park in Detroit.
Well, hey, let's put it together. I got a trip in June, and we're gonna be in Ohio, so we could easily just go from Cleveland to Detroit. We could make that happen. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, we're on, big guy.
By the way, worst baseball stadium in America.
We can do our podcast live there.
We should. We absolutely should. We could call it the 3 Beer Podcast, where we both have to drink 3 beers before we crack the mic. I like that. I absolutely. I think we should institute that the entirety of the podcasts at americastalking.com. I think we should do that.
Sounds great. So what is your least favorite stadium?
Wrigley Field in Chicago. It's a dump.
Oh,
have you been?
Yeah. Yeah, I used to live in Chicago, so
it's
my former estranged fiance of mine and I used to walk our way there from the Newtown area to see ball games.
And it's not just because I don't like the Cubs or Cub fans. Wrigley Field is just objectively, it's a terrible ballpark, and it's ungodly expensive. So,
yeah, well, there's that. Okay, well, I guess we're running out of time here for today. So, Benjamin Yount, thank you so much for being here today and all of your insights. I do appreciate it. And I appreciate all your legwork and writing on Wisconsin taxpayer-focused stories. And Benjamin Yount is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, and Wisconsin in Focus is powered by the Center Square, a production of America's Talking Network. You can find all of the Center Square's great podcasts at americastalking.com. And if you enjoy this podcast, we ask you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Bruce Walker, Midwest Regional Editor of the Center Square Newswire Service. Listen for another episode of Wisconsin in Focus next week.